Yeah, what's up, bro? Oh yeah, just to tell you. So I got a reservation for 7 p.m. at Daidu.
Okay, cool.
So Joshua, I think he said he lands like I'll check confirm. I think it was 6:30. So rather than him try to like drive up here for like an hour or like like you drive, I'm like, can we just meet in Central Austin? It's just easy, I think.
Yeah, I was texting him too once I guess we all kind of found out what was happening.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly when he said he's landing, but he told me where he's staying, and it's actually right by the restaurant.
Oh,
So
perfect. Okay.
it'll work perfectly for him. At least if I got the address right,
Yeah.
it'll work perfectly for him to just go over there. I might pick him up, just but he
Yep.
could walk if he needed to.
Cool. Okay. No, I'm glad it worked out logistically. Yes, it's up here. It's just a bit. It's a far drive. I told him him and I will cut. Well, I'll have him drive up tomorrow to record in person. But trying to make him drive up and you drive up, and they'll be eating at like probably 9 p.m. at like a bar somewhere. It's like,
This is fine.
yeah.
I'm like, I haven't used this equipment in a while because I bought it during when everything shut down during COVID. I bought it because I was doing live streams for my clients since a lot of them I do have a lot of clients who train at home anyway. They're in the
Hmm.
garage gym, but I had a lot of people who go to a gym and they were trying I there was so little that we could do with minimal equipment. I mean, you can
Hmm.
give them workouts, but obviously if you're a strength oriented guy and you're used to working with like heavy stuff and they have like one kettlebell at home, you feel like they're not doing what they really signed up to do. So I felt like I had to give them a little extra. So I started doing live streams for them where I answer their questions or go into some more detail about stuff. And then I didn't really use it much after that. Once things opened up again, I've been on a few podcasts, but the last one was like over a year ago. I was on the Tom Wood show, but I hadn't dusted it off for a while, and since I got my new laptop, so I was like, oh, I don't know. So I got an adapter. Seems to be working okay.
Cool. No, yeah, that
So
sounds great. Yeah, I got a whole bunch of podcast audio equipment. I've been like in this. I recorded a podcast back in like 2017, 18, where I basically just brain dumped everything I had learned about health, fitness, training, whatever at the time. And then I did like probably 80 episodes, and then I was done. Like I'm like, I don't need to say anymore. I don't want to keep the podcast going just to be feel like I'm repeating myself. So then I just stopped for 7 years.
it's funny. I actually respect that because sometimes it feels like people just keep pumping out content because they feel like they have to
Hmm.
stay in the public eye, have to keep, but they don't have anything more interesting to say. So it's actually very honorable to just be like, I think I said what I have to say about this topic, at least for now.
Yeah.
And I guess now you felt like you had something more to say again, which pick it back up.
Yeah. So like it was very recent because I've been wanting to do video for a long time, but like YouTube video, especially for fitness, the production value expectation is so high. Yeah, the Athlete X and like Jeff DeParge of the world and like the Renaissance crew, like everyone has like a full-time crew. They've got a videographer, a production. They got 6 people doing production. And like I'm a one-man operation here.
Yeah, and it's funny too because guys like us who are in the industry for a long time as professionals, I think we are way less like I don't see the attraction to that. I am much more like if the content is good, I could be a guy rubbing charcoal on a shovel.
Hmm.
Um, and if they're just telling me the same thing I've heard a million times before, I don't care how good your production quality is. But I think that's at least my perspective. But I think that that perspective is not the norm. I
No.
think they're getting these views and likes and clicks because people like that. So I always think, in some ways I'm grateful that I speak to a small audience because I don't want my life to be complicated, but in some ways I'm like, I wish more people would kind of get this message.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like the fitness, like it's we should probably start the podcast, start talking, but like it's changed so much over the years. Obviously, like I still remember when blogging was king.
Yeah.
And like if you were famous 10, 15 years ago, it's because you wrote a really good blog that people had to read. And I still prefer written content or to the point content, right? It just, they even call stuff content now. I'm like, all right, we're content creators. But then I went in the fitness industry and then everyone, especially like the science and evidence bullshit crowd for the most part, like everyone runs through the topics of like, all right, let's talk about science and evidence based nutrition, training, diet, rep ranges, exercises. Okay, like there's a certain sort of template of stuff. And then once you get past that, it's like, well, let's just make videos about what everyone else said about the subject, and then it just becomes the commentary. It's like whatever, like the Greg and Mike ongoing feud, which is funny if you ever watch the video, but also just so. stupidly pointless. There's no other substance being talked about.
Right. It's a reaction to the 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 reaction. That initial reaction was 2018. It's like, okay, unless it's like the People magazine, like you're following the drama of your like niche celebrity.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly that. Which I just don't want that kind of. I'm very comfortable with the level of fame I have now. Like I get recognized a lot in public, like pretty consistently, like once a week, twice a week, even where I live here. Like I'm good. Like I don't want more. I'm not. I don't. Yeah, the level of success that this has brought me, having this kind of like reputation, internet fame. Like I'm very set on it. I'm trying to build other things like different companies at this point.
Yeah. At the peak of starting strength popularity, which I think has waned, and I'm not associated with them anymore, but when I was probably either the I would say one of the top 2 or 3 most recognizable coaches outside of Rip himself.
Yeah.
Like 2015 to 2018, give or take.
Mhm.
And I would probably get recognized at that point, maybe I would say maybe once a month on average, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. Like it wasn't that much, but it was enough to. And like to me, like I wouldn't really want it to be more than that. But it was, it's kind of fun, like whatever. But I'm friends with Michael Malice, who also lives, and so we hang out together a lot. And almost every time we do something, there'll be 1 or 2 people, and it's just like that must be a little exhausting.
Yeah, well, it's you also have to have like situational awareness at all times.
Yeah,
Like
especially if you say controversial stuff.
yeah. Yeah, am I being watched? Am I being recorded? Like, security. Another big factor. Like, Cernovich is a really good friend of mine, Mike Cernovich, who I've known him over a decade. At this point, and like he's hyper paranoid about his like personal safety, like and his appearances, all that. But like, rightly so. Like, he's gotten a decade plus of death threats and stalkers and weird shit that happens to you.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely don't like. It's just not for me. Like, I'm not getting involved in the power plays of the world. Like I'm just trying to get people to lift weights and be stronger. Like I don't need that kind of drama. Like you want to start?
Yeah, or actually, we're recording. I'll just do like a very super simple. Like, this is like a 30-second count.
I mean, you can use any of that you want if you want. It's fine with me.
Yeah, let's go. Let me go. 3, 2, 1. What's up, friends? This is episode 5 of the Golden Age of Broscience podcast. And sponsors, just read the show notes, guys. Elite Research, codes 10AJAC. Call High Tech Health for sauna. Contact Vanguard if you want your blood work done. You want to find out your reproductive health, fertility testing, testosterone levels for men. Code also 10AJAC. All right, that out of the way. I've got Wolf Strength here. Just to give you guys some background context, is Wolf your real name?
It's my last name.
All right, so all right,
basically everybody calls me that. Cool. My first name is Michael. My family calls me that. It's super common name. Nothing wrong with it, but when your last name is Wolf, it kind of just naturally becomes what people call you.
That's awesome. All right, so we got Wolf here. For those who don't know, Wolf he's been a coach for a long time. He's been in the industry a long time. He is one of the people that I wanted to have on because he legitimately works with people, applied practice trains, actual clients. He's done so his entire career, which is increasingly actually rare in the fitness industry. Most coaches, content creators today don't work with anyone truly. He was at one time a part of the Starting Strength sort of organization, was a very prominent coach there. Guy just has a crazy wealth of experience. And more than all that, he also is a very good thinker. Yeah, especially in the fitness industry and health industry. Very few people have cohesive philosophies as to how they approach learning and doing things and trying to think by first principles. And he's definitely got that in spades. So, Wolf, we're here. Let's talk, bro.
All right, cool. Well, I hope I don't have to do an open-ended lecture because I didn't prepare for that.
No, you're good, man. You're good. So, yeah, I know you. It's funny. I think how long have you been training? Let's kind of like just create a timeline.
Training as
in terms of just in the industry.
As a professional?
Yeah.
20 years.
Okay. So I've been in about 16. So like I got started in 2010. So you were like what, 2006?
Technically my last year of college was 04, 05, and I actually had a work study job in the workout room that year. So you could technically say I was getting paid, but there you're more of a weight room supervisor. But the very next year, as soon as I graduated, I got hired at Equinox, and have been doing it full time ever since then. So, that was '05.
Oh, so you started as an Equinox first. So you went the route of like the, you know what I'm talking about. You went the route of like commercial gym trainer.
I have done, yeah. I mean, back then there weren't that many different routes. Like
No.
it's so easy to forget for people who are newer in the industry. I think is how it works. They take for granted all the paths that are available now for somebody to. You could be at a CrossFit gym, you could be at a commercial gym, you could be at a specialty gym, bodybuilding or powerlifting gym. You could be independent, just doing online coaching. You could do no coaching at all. You could just create content on a plethora of social media platforms and not even work with anybody. Um, Almost none of those options existed back then, right? I mean, if it wasn't probably what it wasn't that in 20. So you said 2010 you started.
Yeah, I my
Or
first gym
what?
job
It
was
wasn't that.
2009 actually. I
Oh,
was
that,
at
yeah.
24-hour fitness. I was doing the 24-hour used to like they partially went out of business at this point, but at one time they had a chain of 24-hour light gyms where it was just like a Nautilus circuit.
Wow.
And so you worked in the smaller gym and you had to instruct people on how to do like basically the Nautilus high intensity workout using like the 12, 15 machines we had. So I did that for a few months and then I got my personal training cert and then moved on to like a full size 24-hour as personal trainer.
Yeah, I think if my memory serves, the landscape in '09, 2010 was pretty similar to '05. I don't think it had changed that much yet. I think CrossFit had started to become a little bit of a thing. So you might have like one other option other than a commercial gym. But in terms of anything online, social media, I mean, is an infancy. You had Facebook, and I think that at that time you still had MySpace, but nobody was doing anything significant online. YouTube was in its infancy. I'm sure there were a few people who were posting stuff on YouTube back then, but I don't think anybody was having a career based on
No.
YouTube back then. And even the landscape of what was normal, like it's so easy to forget. I think CrossFit has now gotten so far past the peak of its popularity that people forget how massively influential it was. When I started in '05, I was in an Equinox gym, actually the first one that ever opened. It was the Upper West Side location in Manhattan.
Oh, wow.
It was the original location. I wasn't there, I think it opened in '92. I got there in '05. And you had people who were, formal football players as were on the staff, and like, you would think it would be like the pinnacle of everything. I don't think I saw a single person take a barbell out and squat below parallel for a year. You know what I mean? So the landscape was so different. So what CrossFit did, obviously this isn't as relevant to the bodybuilding side of things, but what it did for just people knowing what happens in a gym, CrossFit was a total game changer. And so even if you never worked in one, even if you didn't even like CrossFit, even if you thought it was stupid, the way that it changed the landscape of like just regular people be like, oh yeah, it's normal to see people squatting and cleaning. That's something that you might do in a gym. Or even something like working hard, as opposed to just kind of like you said, like how many people work hard at that circuit gym? Probably zero, right? It was like people checking a box, I bet.
Yeah,
Um,
it was pretty
so,
funny
so,
working it. I remember like this. Yeah, it was like basically like the Arthur Jones like version 5.0, right? But the machines like hit miss. Obviously, if you fit a machine, you fit it. If you don't, you don't. But trying to get people who had never lifted weights, who never resistance trained, to work hard on machines, which may or may not suit their body, it was such a waste of time overall. There'd be
yeah,
like one or two guys that really like would push it hard, and then everyone else is just you're doing what the every elderly sort of elder novice person does. They sort of just like move the limbs loosely.
right.
Like,
Yes.
oh, is this working? Like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know that even today it's funny. There's still so much heated argument about Arthur Jones. And then Mike Menser was kind of the carrying that on, and sort of Dorian Yates after that, although not quite as extreme. People still argue about, is that the best way to train it? But even if it is, like you could argue either side, whatever. Even if it is, it's dependent on like super high intensity. Like you're taking that one set to like bone on bone failure, right? These people, those just 99% of them at least, they don't even know what failure is. So anyway, my point, I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but
Oh no, it's good.
the landscape was so different back then. There weren't that many other options, at least certainly that I knew about, but even looking back, I don't think there were that many. So I was incredibly excited that I got hired at Equinox right out of college without any prior experience. I thought you might have to go to like a lower level gym first. They
Yeah.
were kind of considered a higher level gym. So I started there. I was there as a trainer for about a year and a half to 2 years before I got promoted to assistant manager of the personal training department. They called it fitness manager, but
Yep.
it was basically assistant manager of the PT department. Then after another year, I got promoted to personal training manager, where I had to move clubs to, I was the head of the Wall Street personal training department for almost 3 years.
Ah,
And, I got that job in my mid 20s, and looking back, I can't believe they gave that responsibility to somebody so young. I was there for the worst years. I got there right like smack when the financial crash happened. And even still, we were losing members left and right. We were having, there were mass layoffs every few months of the companies that we had our biggest corporate contracts with. Even despite that, we still were doing, I want to say, about approximately $2.5 million a year as a department in revenue.
that's nice. I mean, it was New York. It was New York.
Solely on personal training, not the whole gym, just the personal training department, which is the extra service. So I did that for about 3 years. I went back to being a trainer there for one more year, and then I went independent after that. So, during one thing I like about my time at Equinox, even though I obviously, was not going to stay there forever, and there's plenty of things I didn't like, I got exposed to so many different types of trainers, both people on the staff, people who taught you like their in-house education. You had people who were all the way on the functional training side of the spectrum to an absurd degree. And even though I would never recommend somebody train that way, like, you pick up something from that. Then you have a lot of the trainers just come from standard bodybuilding backgrounds. Like, we had, former competitive bodybuilders would be on staff. I don't train that way. I don't train my clients that way, but I pick up something from them. You had a lot of people anywhere in between. So it exposed you to all different kinds. At least, I don't know what it's like now, but at least back then it did.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I got started, it was, so I mean, 2010, like, it was 5 years later. I was 20. It's like I started like my last year of college. I graduated early, like in 3 years, or it's like 3 years in a semester. But it was interesting because, like, I was on, 24-hour fitness and Equinox are different demographics, obviously. So, like, my 24-hour fitness was in Silicon Valley. So a lot of tech guys, but it was not that probably more Tony money experience that, you'd have like in Manhattan. But the clientele was obviously very diverse. It was like older Jewish men and women. It was the usual moms and dads, a lot of tech guys. We had like a very big kids club, a lot of parents. And the trainers on staff ran the whole gauntlet of rugby players to like the mom trainer to like the old 65-year-old bodybuilder that everyone really respected. And he had his ways about him. But your first, I'm sure you can relate, your first like year or two personal training, 3 years, you don't really know anything at all. Yeah, like every few months you look back on like, what was I doing with those people? Like, why did I do that? Like, you're still, everyone, at least at the gyms I worked at, like half the staff any given time, they just like do the magazine workouts. Like, oh, I got a client coming in. Someone give me a workout for him.
Yeah, it's actually really funny that you say that, because I would see something so often back in those days that I just saw today at the gym that I hadn't seen. It reminded me actually of that. It was kind of like an older middle-aged person, let's say somebody 50 to 60 or 55 to 60, who's not really in great shape. They hire a trainer. Some people hire a trainer because they really want to optimize. They want to be pushed. A lot of people hire a trainer, especially in those kind of places, because without the trainer, they're not doing any kind of workout at all. So this was that situation. So you'd see that a lot at Equinox. And this morning it echoed that, where it was somebody who hired the trainer because they probably wouldn't do anything at all without them. And the trainer isn't giving them a workout that's suitable for that type of person. Like, we have 2 hours a week. The rest of the week are totally sedentary. We're just going to make you active. We're going to try to work the whole body. We're going to try to get you moving. They're just giving them the same like chest split workout that they did that morning before the client came in. And I saw that again this morning. I used to see that so much, and it reminded me, because I hadn't seen that in years. It was a guy, and look, I'm not meaning to disparage people, like, but generalizations are often true, which is why they're generalizations. It was a guy whose whole arms and legs are covered with tats. He's jacked out of his mind. His neck is covered with tats. Like, I know people like that who are good friends of mine. But like, there's a certain type, and he's coaching this like 55-year-old kind of out of shape woman, giving her this like what I would bet is the same workout, like the same intense split workout he did that morning. And it was just like, wow, I haven't seen that one in a while.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to always, yeah, past year one, I never did that with people, but it's such a common thing. Like your workout, it was like a running joke. Like whatever someone trained that day, it's like, all right, if trainer Bobby had his leg day on Friday, all of his clients also did their leg days on Friday, regardless of their level, and it was his leg day.
Right.
But the thing that was, I remember, like my interest in personal training was not because I wanted to be a personal trainer. So like I've told the story before, but like I originally my career plan in quotes, I wouldn't really call it a career, but I wanted to be a professional ballet dancer. I tore off half my hamstring freshman year of college, so that left leg still doesn't work right to this day. I had to do my own rehab. That got me into barbell training because I learned how to deadlift, trying to
Yeah.
rehab my hamstring. I was like, oh, like barbells. I don't have the anthropometrics for it all, but like I like lifting the barb. My deadlift went up. My lifts went up to mediocre levels of strength. I'm like, this is awesome. And then I was like, well, yeah, I'm enjoying this, and like I like learning about it. I think I could teach it or like help people. And personal training paid more than minimum wage. So personal trainer, you start like $20 an hour, which back in
Yeah.
2010, like that was good. Uh, so I got into it, and then I just never stopped. But the thing that kept me interested in it was, more so like the thinking aspect of it, where trying to figure out like a training philosophy of like, what do people actually need? How should I think about this? Since like I realize, I think every good trainer goes through this. Your first couple years of training, you're sort of throwing workouts at people, you're throwing exercises at them, but there's no real overarching model that you follow. Like, what are you actually trying to progress them through, like from point to point B? Then also not having a lot of experience, like what actually works? Like, what are the things that are fundamental, whether it's big three or big five or, the whatever, the fundamental six, everyone's got like a particular scheme. Like, what do we actually need to train to progressively build the body systematically? Like, what does that look like? And that takes a while to figure out.
Yeah, it definitely. I mean, I would say I think I have a pretty good idea, but I wouldn't say yet I have it all completely figured out. Like there's still things that in the last few years I've adjusted on compared to, like, if you had asked me like 3 or 4 years ago, I think I would have been realistic enough to not say I have it all figured out, but I guess I would say I've made some changes, more changes even up to recently than I would have guessed I would have.
Mm.
Like generally the longer you go, probably the less you're going to change. Not that you won't change anything, but I've made some adjustments to things that, and that I probably wouldn't have guessed I would have. Um, and Even now, I'm still. I guess there isn't the perfect universal model yet that like fits every situation, but I try to think in those terms. I try to think in the terms of like what makes sense from the ground up, like you said, first principles.
Yeah.
Um, Even if I don't have it all figured out yet, I try to think in those kind of terms.
How do you explain that to clients now? So, I've been working with people 20 years. Like, you got, general population, I assume predominantly. You're not a competitive powerlifting coach. But like, when you get new people on board, like what is sort of the philosophy you present to them of what we're trying to achieve?
That's a great question. It really it's hard to answer that question because it I I have to talk to what the client wants. So most of the people who come to me at this point come to me because they already either have seen something I've posted somewhere
Mm.
on one of the various Twitter or Substack or something like that, or they've seen me on an interview or something, or they generally already know about something like starting strength or things like that. So I don't have to do too much selling of what I do, but I do
Right.
occasionally get just a random person. And if that, in that case, in those cases, I have to try to figure out what's bothering them and kind of make it about how what I do will positively affect what's bothering them. So if what's bothering them is, let's take the example that's the funniest. Let's say they're just overweight and that's the only thing they care about. Now, I'm not known as a cutting, leaning out guy, right? I'm known as a strength guy. But what I would tell them is, look, the first thing we're going to do is not get you real lean, which in today's world is very controversial because the standard wisdom is cut down to 10% body fat first and worry about everything else later. That's not what I did. What I tell them is if they are in fact actually that overweight, they are going to get leaner just by cleaning up their eating and starting to lift a little bit. They've previously been sedentary and eating anything they wanted. You are going to lose some weight, but what we're going to do is we're going to build a foundation that's going to allow you to have the best physique and the best performance in the future, because we're going to focus not exclusively but primarily on just building your base strength first, and that's going to allow you to do anything else you want to do better. It's going to be easier for you to cut when you have a little more muscle mass. It's going to be easier if you decide you want to do a sport, you want to transition into even a triathlon. Like I'm not making these people powerlifters. I'm just giving them a base of strength. If you want to decide to take up, whether you used to play basketball, you want to play basketball again. Like if you can squat 275, we're not talking about 500, right? If you get your squat from 75 to 250 or 275, like you're going to be better at that. And if you're also actually overweight and if you have too much fat, like you will lose a little bit of fat in the process, at least if you do it, reasonably. So I try to kind of make it about what their need is. I use that example because that's the typical example of the thing that's least connected to what I do. I'm not typically known as like a weight loss or leaning out guy. And then if they actually go through that process, they, get regular, let's say regular person strong, not like power lifter or bodybuilder or strongman strong. Then they actually are in fact set up to do whatever they want to do better. And they didn't have to go through tremendous suffering to do so. I think about what it takes to get down to 10% body fat, which I have done, but not for a long time. Probably 2008 is probably early 2008 is probably the last time I was that lean. And that was before there were ubiquitous high quality cell phones. So unfortunately there's no pictures of it, but oh well, who cares? But it takes suffering to get down to that level. And like, it doesn't take a lot of suffering. It takes some guts. It takes some testicular fortitude, as I like to say, to go through a strength building phase, but it doesn't take real suffering like the way going down to 10% body fat does. So now you've even let's say the person's really fat. Let's say they started at 30% body fat and now they're, 5 months later, they're only 25% or 26%. Like they're still leaner than they were. But instead of squatting 75 pounds, they squat 250. Instead of, benching 90 pounds, they bench 185. Like, how much easier is it for them to do, even if now they're like, okay, I have a base, I want to focus on getting lean. Like, how much easier is it to do from that position? I think it's a lot easier. And I use the example of the things that are like the least my wheelhouse.
Yeah, no, that's
so things that are more my wheelhouse are even better,
Yeah, no, for when it comes to strength development, which we'll talk about, but like I've become of a similar mind over the years where obviously everyone wants to lose body fat. Like I've got fat loss coaching groups right now. My fat loss programs have sold thousands of copies. Like I know how to take body fat off people. But there's suffering involved. Although, I mean, GLP-1s kind of make it easier, but you're still, your
That's
diet.
true. I was speaking about the old times.
Yeah, the new times you don't have to feel anything, which maybe that's terrible. But the thing is, like when you're talking about like speaking seriously, like all right, we want to make this a lifestyle habit, right? We want to change your identity of who you are, and that you're a stronger, fitter person, and exercise part of your life. It's a lot easier to do that if you start with just training, and they develop that sensory feedback. They're feeling the muscles work. They see the results obviously in the gym from that. That then corresponds to diet changes. It makes that a lot more conducive because if you train really hard, whatever, you have basic workout, you have your squat workout, and then you don't eat anything afterwards, you have no protein, you're super sore. It's like, oh, I understand now why I should have protein. It's just like an easy switch to flip. And you do that for a few. I when I had clients, in person regularly, I did talk about diet for a month. I just told them, let's just train and just train hard, and that's it. And at the end of the month, you'll sort of understand why we need to sort of shift focus to nutrition. And everyone that showed up twice a week that was consistent, they got that very readily. Like, okay, I can see now that yes, like hard training requires, some nutritional adjustments. And it makes the process a lot more natural.
Yeah, and you could argue. I mean, there are people who do it well both ways, so you can't make 100% blanket statement. But I think in general, like if somebody loses, we've all seen somebody who's lost a lot of weight and gained it all back, and that's in fact almost even the norm. You lose a lot of weight, you gain it all back, or gain a lot of it back. If you become strong once, you're basically reasonably strong for life. You're obviously not going to hold on to all of it, but if you work your way up to a 405 deadlift as somebody who's 30, 40, like you don't train for 10 years, you're going to come in the gym and still be able to pull 275 or 315. You're not going to have 405 on you, but you're going to have 275 still. And on day one, the most you could do is like 115, 135. Like you're going to be reasonably strong basically for life, unless you just like, as long as you walk around in live as a normal person. Like if you obviously get a disease or you literally sit in a chair, it'll rot away more. But if you just don't do anything other than normal walking, whatever activities that a normal person does without lifting, you're going to retain a lot of that for life. So it in the way that you said, I kind of reinforcing what you said, it changes you more on a permanent level, because the structures that you build to become stronger, the muscles get bigger, the tendons and ligaments get thicker, the bones get more dense. Those things are very costly physiologically for the body to do. It takes a lot of resources for the body to turn the food you eat into those things. So it doesn't quickly cannibalize them. And the neuromuscular efficiency that you build by lifting heavier weights, that also, some of that will stay with you. So those are costly adaptations to make, and the body doesn't want to let them go quickly. Whereas something like fat loss or gain is easier come and easier go. So it doesn't necessarily, a lot of people do, people keep it off, they become a totally different person. I'm not saying it can't happen, but on just a physiological basis, like it's physiologically more costly to build than it is to take away fat. And I think that is exactly what you were saying. It does stay with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, that kind of gets like the question, the subject matter I want to talk about a lot with you, which is like strength training and like getting people stronger. Since like that was my big missing piece that took me like a few years to really tap into. And obviously I know it's been your thing for a long time, where you start off as like a newbie trainer. Now, really, for like, it is for anyone, like your general population, the average Joe, average Jane, you want to get fit, you want to get in shape, healthier. It's like, what am I actually trying to accomplish here? And what I realized, especially watching other trainers train clients, what you want to start with ideally is strength training. And not just strength training, I don't mean it generically, but if you build that neuromuscular base, you change your body's hardware and you improve your ability to, globally express power and contract muscle tissue. That's a more or less a permanent change. And so long as you keep it up, even twice a week, it never goes away. And that gives you a base to build on. Versus if you just do like the workout, right? Or like the circus training is what I call it. Like you go to the gym, you hire a trainer, you're doing the balancing. This is stereotypical, like the balancing bullshit. The workout changes week to week. It's like today it's functional, today it's TRX. I'm gonna combine some kettlebells. I watched some YouTube video that you're gonna do. There's no actual progression towards anything, and you can spin your wheels doing that for years, and never actually know like what's a KPI? What is moving the physiological needle?
Yeah. The KPI thing is a good concept. That I actually think conceptually it was a concept I was working with, but that term I actually think I first saw from something you tweeted. I was like, he says, it was like a year or two ago, you said something about high KPI lifts.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what's KPI? So I looked it up. I was like, oh, that's the term for the key performance indicator, right? Am I right?
Yeah, right.
I was like, that's the term for this idea that I've been using, but I didn't have a specific term for it. So I think I saw that from you for the first time.
Yeah, no, I mean, let me say, I got that from like business world. Like we're bros, obviously, like we don't work in finance, but like I had a client years ago that asked me that, and I didn't know what the hell he meant at all. He's like, yeah, I'm trying to tell him like new client, like on board. I'm like, all right, we're gonna get you stronger. This day, he's like, okay, he's like, this, I like this is cool. He's like, so like, we're like the KPIs here that like we're paying attention to. I was like, yeah, like the what? It's like, the KPIs. I'm like, you're gonna have to explain to me. He's like, it means key performance indicator. He's like, so like if you have a business, if like, for like, his job, he has some kind of analysis. He's like, when we're tracking performance, like we have certain metrics that we look at that are indicative of the state of, system and, whether it's profit loss or something else or sales or, revenue, like all these things. So I was like, oh, wow, like it's definitely not my world. But it's just such a useful concept. I was like, that actually works really well for fitness, for health. Like, okay, like what are the things that matter the most that we're trying to improve? For strength gain, it's like, okay, where are the exercises that actually deliver the most on strength gain? Like that's, very easy conceptual flow.
Yeah. And I even though I will often, for the sake of simplification of somebody I'm talking to or trying to keep it, sometimes I tweet long, sometimes I try to keep it within the limit. I will sometimes refer to myself as a powerlifter or, in the powerlifting world, but I'm not really, like, not hardcore at least. I think people forget because powerlifting has been a little bit of a it's been a victim of Goodhart's law. Have you heard of Goodhart's law?
Tell me.
That'll be my time to introduce you. So it's the idea that when a metric becomes the goal, it ceases to be a useful metric.
Ah,
So in powerlifting, squat, bench press, deadlift because that's the sole goal, and they with squat, bench press, deadlift within the rule set of the sport.
mm-hmm.
So people are now do all sorts of crazy things like they invented barbells that are easier to deadlift with that can add 10% to the deadlift, and
I hate
lot. I know I don't like them. They call them noodle bars.
Yeah, I hate pulling on because I deadlifted on nothing right. I deadlifted when I got started training. It was 24-hour fitness. It was like a standard stiff bar, right? Like like sort of like the multi-use stiff bar. It was like an iron grip bar. There is no bend on that damn thing at all. And it's also designed for like hexagonal plates, right? So like it's change in position. But I loved how just the feel of it. I'm like, there's no flexion.
Yeah.
You know how so bar feels. You pull on it, the thing bends in the middle.
So if you look, so this is something. We're getting a little bit inside baseball here, but it's to illustrate the point. If you look back at powerlifting before all these changes were made, like in the 90s, early 90s, 80s, early 90s, it started changing really. I mean, it was gradual. There's not like one inflection point, but by the mid to late 90s, it was pretty different. Ed Cohn, I want to say, I think it was in the early 90s. Maybe it was the late 80s, but I think it was the early 90s. He pulled a 901 deadlift at a competition. So he'd already squatted and benched at a body weight of, I think, 220 he was competing at. 901 at 220. Now, if you look at that lift, it's available on YouTube. Just Ed Cohn 901 at 220. Ed Cohn, for those who don't know, is still to this day usually considered the greatest powerlifter of all time. He lifts that bar. The thing bends like 1 millimeter. He pulled that bar from the low shin. If you look at the guys now who are pulling 1,000, and powerlifting, 1,000 is about the most you see. A little more than I think that one guy pulled 1070 or something like that. Or in strongman, obviously Thor just pulled 1120. I mean, it's amazing. But if you look at these lifts, the bar is bending inches up before it leaves the ground. Now, does that mean the person's not strong? Obviously, the person's strong. You have to be incredibly strong to do that. But it's not apples to apples. It's not like the old ways. So my broader point is powerlifting people are now trying to maximize what they could squat, bench, and deadlift within the confines of whatever the rules are, without regard for, like on the bench, you have people with crazy high arch and super wide grip, without regard for the reason why those lifts were chosen in the first place. The reason those lifts were chosen in the first place is because when they're done the way kind of a normal person would do them, a deadlift on a stiff bar with a conventional stance, a squat below parallel, walked out, a bench press with a moderate grip and a small arch just so your shoulder blades can be a little bit retracted, and a moderate with grip. Like those are all high KPI lifts. Now, it doesn't mean those are the only lifts you should do for your whole lifting career, but those are inherently high KPI lifts because they work a large amount of muscle mass over a long range of motion, involve a large part of the body. You can use a lot of weight on all of them relative to what those muscles are capable of. Obviously, a lot less on the deadlift, or a lot less on the bench and the deadlift, but relative to what the upper body can handle, you can use a lot on the bench press. Those lifts are all inherently high KPI lifts. Now, there might be reasons for somebody who is a little more advanced to do other things, to move away from, there's lots of nuance that you can do as you kind of progress through your career. But my roundabout way of saying that is people forget, because of Goodhart's law, because powerlifting to some extent has become a little silly with things that people do in order to have more weight on the scoreboard rather than display strength. They're displaying their ability to just have a higher number. People forget that those are very high KPI lifts. People and the way they're done in powerlifting doesn't always display that, but the way they're kind of just done by normal people, those are high KPI lifts. And that's one of the reasons that I also like the overhead press. I also like, chin ups or lat pull downs. I like rows, but those lifts, to me, form the center of a beginner's program because they're so inherently high KPI. One of the things I argue about with sometimes people are like, it doesn't matter. There's no magic lifts. It's just progressive overload. And like, to some extent, that's true. Like there isn't such thing as a magic lift. Like you could theoretically make progress with any collection of lifts as long as you're progressing them. But there are which lift can you progress more? So you say it's all progressive overload. How much can I progressively overload those lifts in my first 6 months compared to a lateral raise and a wrist curl, compared to a calf raise and a leg extension? I can progressively they have the highest progressive overload potential. So when I'm starting out, when you're already strong, you're going to get more out of the other stuff. But when you're kind of first starting out, those give you a really high KPI lifts, and they give you the ability to progress without having to change things up, without having to do anything super complex for a while. They're not the only lifts that have that, but they are certainly kind of form the core of it.
No, I agree. Yeah, like I've had like a love-hate relationship with barbell lifts, not because I think they're bad lifts, but just for my own personal, like I said, physiology. I have very long arms and very long legs and a very short torso. Um, so like bench press, it's not.
It's
I have
go,
no mechanical advantage, right? And then
it's going 4 miles, and then the
yeah,
squat, you probably have a very bent over squat too with what you described. So
yeah,
that puts you at a disadvantage in the squat.
yeah. No, my squat was just, like the best I ever did. I was 315 for 5, and I had to go. I had to squat out so wide, it was almost like an equipped squat. And like I have my position on like really wide squatting. I think past a certain point, it becomes almost like anti-athletic because you're training force production, this very sort of like ultra wide plane. It doesn't necessarily transfer over because you're structurally rotated, at least for myself. But deadlifting, I was always reasonably okay at. Like I was able to get to like 500 deadlift just myself, just adding 5 pounds to the bar. But that's my personal relationship with the lifts. But over the years of like I've read the starting strength book. Like I've in the past I had some back and forth like starting strength. I think like the X page. But like overall, I've come to actually respect the program and also just respect the program around the big three. That if I think through this and I need to design, if I was sort of like given a human body right now, I'm a master mechanic. I'm like, okay, how can I progressively load this body through its primary planes of force production, which is sort of pulling stuff off the ground, pushing, projecting force forward and just moving your hips up and down, like hip ascension, descension. What can I do that is standardized, loads the whole skeleton, requires global muscle recruitment, is very easy to, like we say, KPI, but very easy to create like an objective metric around. You're lifting a percentage of your body weight. I could use a barbell, which is a perfectly balanced instrument that evenly loads weight and evenly loads the skeleton. And that can work great. And you can obviously, as we said, you can load that for a very, very, very long time. Now, your setup and how wide you go, using heel wedges or elevating the heel, something like that. You can adjust that, but you really can't. I don't. I mean, I've tried everything else. That's the thing. Like I've tried to train people with just dumbbells. I've tried to train people just body weight. I've run so many experiments over the years, and nothing really beats good barbell training for building a strength base. I've tried. Last thing I've tried to do it, and now it just is a little bit better for the reasons we just said. You can just go a bit heavier, and it's very easy to get. People understand it, and you for 6 months, and you're sort of like set the rest of your lifting life.
Yeah, you added some important things to what I had already said about the the details that you added there were great, and that's what I found too. A lot of people think that because I do what I do now, that I've never tried anything else. I've been doing this for a long time, so I guess people just associate me strongly with it. But I came from a bodybuilding background, as far not like competitive, but the lifting style. I was never into like dieting or competing, but the lifting style, and I did that for my first 4 or 5 years. Then I tried a little bit of the more equinox style functional, like what you call the circus stuff, and that I quickly saw was not working. Then I got more into kind of like the pop sports specific stuff. I would say like the people who, I don't know if they still do, they used to all be like big with Perform Better, like Mike Boyle, Eric Cressy, FMS type guys. I'm like, I did learn some things from their approach. I don't follow that approach globally, but one or two things here and there. I tried that. I tried kettlebells, hard style kettlebells is like my big thing. Dabbled in CrossFit, dabbled in Olympic lifting, and I tried almost everything there was to try. And I found exactly what you found, that like just put off for 6 months or 3 months or 9 months, put off your grandiose desires to be like the specialist at that. Just spend 6 months just getting base strong in exactly the way you described. And then you'll be in a better position to do any of those other things. That's what I found, without exception.
Yeah, like it's like in a way almost like I won't say I wish it wasn't true, but because I wish I was I always wish I was naturally better at the barbell lifts. I wish I was one of those guys that had like a bigger shoulder joint or different limb dimensions. Like I wish I could be really good at this. But that said, for like your own population, for if you want the most effective solution for the broadest, largest number of people, it's going to be the barbell. And you can add in things, right? Like you can add in chin-ups. Like you add it. I mean, that's what a lot of the strength training,
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit less orthodox than like pure Ripito mainlining. I was with him for a long time. I still respect him tremendously. I give him tons of credit for my career. I have a few. Anybody who's coaches themselves for a long time is going to have come up with a few wrinkles on their own. I'm a little bit less kind of strict with that, but what I was going to say is even within the strictest version of kind of pure starting strength, as Rip would say it, you're going to do chin-ups on your linear progression. That's like one of the few things that you're going to do, even almost off the bat within your first few weeks. Chin-ups or lat pull-downs if you're not capable of doing a chin-up. Even that in the purest form is still going to be done pretty soon. So yeah, there's kind of other, like you said, global type movement patterns that just the barbell doesn't lend itself. You can't do a chin-up with a barbell. Yeah, you could do a row, but it's not exactly the same. So, lat pull-down or chin-up is something even the purest form of this version would have you do pretty early on.
Yeah, like I have like a super strength program, which I've done with people. It's very simple. It's like the barbell, for sets of 5, and then like a dumbbell movement for sets of like 8, 10, and then you have like your body weight movements, and it's whole body, and it's still squat, bench, deadlift, but you're also getting in like, okay, we're gonna do chin-ups, we're gonna do lateral raises, we'll do like a single leg movement because I've always found that important, especially for balance, to actually be able to go from one leg to the other. But at its core, you're getting stronger across 3 or 4 things within a workout, and then you keep repeating that process. Although there are certain things that like I have that I'm not keen on, like bent over rows, for example. I still think that's a shitty lift for most people.
Oh, really? You don't like those?
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. Like guys who are really good at bent over rowing, it's always the same build. Like if you have a really thick torso, okay, great. You got a thick torso. You got like the good arm length, right? It's not a really long distance for the bar to travel. And it feels like a back exercise if you're built that way. But for so many people, if you got, now you don't have to be freakishly tall, but if you got like really, if you're a woman with really long legs, or you're an elderly person, or you're like you're a guy and you're like a swimmer, or a basketball player, like it just turns into a weird upper back lift. You don't feel in your lats. It's a shitload of low back stress. I'm like, I've never seen the point with it like, it's one of those lifts. I almost find some of the bench press where like 1 in 5 guys will have awesome bench press genetics, and they're like, this is going to be money for you. Like you'll just be able to add weight. It's going to be awesome. And then everyone else, it's like, this will be good to okay to maybe this might fuck you up at like a stupid level strength where you tear a pec at 225. It's like, what the fuck is the point of this? But the Beverly Road, the same thing. Like when it works great. But for everyone else, it just works like shit.
Something when you were talking about your program just before you were talking about the bent over row, I think also if you're coaching people in the real world, you also have to have an eye on who you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things you said were like anthropometry related. This person has super long legs and long arms. Their position in the bent over row, their starting positions, like their hips are going to be higher than their shoulders, and the bars have to travel so far. It's just going to be a low back exercise that just irritates their low back, right? So that's part of it. A part of it is also their temperament. Not everybody is going to want to do like every lift the barbell every day for 6 months before they move on to other stuff. So it's like, oh, you can give them, one day is a squat, one day is a bench, one day is a deadlift or something like that. And then then you have a little bit of variety. Oh, you do something with a dumbbell, you do something with body weight, you do something on one leg. Like that's like a perfectly good way that you can still use like those high KPI lifts. You can still use those objective metrics of we're making progress in a way that we can measure objectively rather than just how you feel or rather than just how you look. Now, I don't mean to minimize those. How you feel and how you look are important. But there's always a little bit of subjectivity there. There's always a little bit of, one of the things I notice, I sometimes when I catch them, I have a few guys who I'll point it out to. A lot of the guys, it's not universal, but a lot of the guys who train almost exclusively or exclusively for the way they look are never actually happy with how they look. And I think I say this, I tread carefully because I don't want to seem like I'm mocking them because I think they would be the first to admit it. But to me, like there's a certain satisfaction that like I care about how I look. For a long time, it was far secondary to how much I lifted. Now I'm getting older. I'm not pushing the lift as hard as I once did. So I'm like, oh, let me get a little leaner. Like, I understand. I care about, I think you should care about how you look. But when that's your sole animating focus, there's a sense in which you can never be satisfied. Right. Whereas it's like you have a specific lifting goal. I want to deadlift 405, or I want to, even if it's not a barbell main lift, even if it's a secondary lift, it's the dumbbells. Like it has an objective metric that you can check and say, now I have accomplished that. Nobody can ever take that away from me. I have deadlifted 405. I have done a dumbbell overhead press for 60 pounds for 10, like whatever it is. Like as long as you didn't cheat the range of motion, right? You have that. That's something that it's not something that is a floating target that is never achievable. It's something that you have done. It's in your logbook. Like you are someone who has done that forever. There's a certain satisfaction to that you don't get if the only thing you do is how you look. I'm not even disparaging like that being a main thing. It's just like if it's very useful to have this objective measure of progress that gives you a certain level of accomplishment, even if maybe you're not happy with how you look today, because that's just your personality. But I benched 100-pound dumbbells for 8 for the first time. Like that's in the logbook. You've done for the rest of your life. You are somebody who has done that.
Yeah, I've like accomplished based, I don't know what you want to call it, like having structuring your training. What I found works over the years, if you obviously everybody wants to look good naked, like that's a given. But if you structure body composition goals around strength goals, you make it into a very like integrated process. That's how I've always tried to set up for people. If we can get you stronger to this level and get you a bit leaner at the same time, you are going to both like the way you look, and you're going to tie that to a level of performance, because it's a lot easier to maintain a level of performance than it is to maintain a look itself. But body fat is variable. Body fat is always in flux. It can go up and down. You don't want your training and all of your health focus to be oriented around just your body composition. Let's say like anyone that's ever known bodybuilders, guys who are really hardcore into it, everyone's neurotic about everything with their physique.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, for the average, typical individual, where your primary goal in life is not even the gym itself; it's something else. Like being healthy is just a vehicle to help you, do the energy for your, number 1, 2, 3, whatever it is that you focus on in life. If we can just, tie your aesthetics to performance and your overall functionality to performance, then it makes training fun, because it's going for those essentially PRs all the time, and you get to feel good about the process, and it's working. And you don't really need to worry about the other stuff. All that's sort of auto-regulated.
Yeah, it's you could definitely go too far in either direction. Like certainly some people criticize powerlifting or starting strength for focusing too much on the numbers and not enough on body composition. And that's actually a critique that I've become more open to over the last few years. I think it's exaggerated to the extent to which it's a problem, but a little bit. And then you have the opposite, the people like you said. Like I think again, a lot of people who criticize me, they think I don't know anything about the other worlds, but I've been in all of those other worlds to some extent or another. I have an ex-girlfriend who was a pro bodybuilder. Before, she had retired right before we started dating, but she competed in women's figure and physique up until this is years ago. But and I met her and her friends and her coach. Her first coach was actually a guy who's like super well known in the bodybuilding world. I forget how to pronounce his last name, Sadiq Hadjovic or something like that. He's super well known in like men's classic physique. He has like millions of followers on social media.
Oh, it's okay. I know who you're talking about. Yeah, he's
So we would hang out. We hung out and talked shop and stuff like that. And you talk to enough people in that world, and also just we had former competitive bodybuilders at Equinox or some who were still competing, and you talk to enough people in that world, and you find exactly what you said, that it's a level of obsession and you have to have that obsession to be in that sport. So it's kind of like Michael Jordan, like he had to be so obsessed to do what he did, but it kind of made him not fit in with a general population. If you're going to coach general population, you don't want to guide them to any of these extremes, because that's not really what they're trying to do. Not to be too neurotic about how they look, not to be too obsessed about gaining fit. You don't want to gain 50 pounds of body weight, mostly fat, to add 10 pounds to your squat. Like both of those are the wrong approach, right? So if it's just like, oh, it's just all about adding weight to your squat and deadlift. Well, I gained 50 pounds. I only added 10 pounds on my squat and deadlift. Like you're going to look like a dumpling, right? On the other hand, if you make them obsessed about body fat and obsessed about body composition to the point that like it becomes neurotic, that's not really good for the general population either. Now, the 0.1% of people who are going to go on a bodybuilding stage, they kind of have to be that way. But that's not, if you're coaching the broad general population, you don't want to really, in my opinion at least, steer them to either of those extremes. And one of the reasons I've become a little more receptive to criticism of that from the fat side is because of how obvious it was to me from the neurotic body composition side. And once I started looking, I was like, oh, I should be a little more cognizant about that from the getting too fat for a small strength gain side. So that's one of the ways in which I was talking before about how I've changed in the last 5 years. That's one of the things I've changed about, is becoming a little more tuned in to not only strength performance, but strength performance within a reasonable body composition. We don't have to be obsessed with it. Like I'm not trying to get my clients down to 10%. But within a, strength performance as our key within a reasonable body composition, rather than like whatever you are.
Yeah, body composition is a funny thing. I was seeing the fitness industry, like popularly, there's the expectation that you should be ripped all the time. Like that's, if you're like do mainstream marketing, like you have to have 6-pack, 8-pack, single-digit body fat. But then it's also like this paradoxical situation that if you're super lean and ripped all the time, well, then like your natural status, of course, will get questioned, are you using or are you not using? And now people are more honest about it, right? And then there's always the running joke of like everyone who says they're natural but looks better than me is on gear, right? And everyone who looks worse than me but is bigger than me, they're lying. I mean that's why like over the years, myself, I've built my following not off of like showing body comp photos, and I've been very lean in the past. Like I used to post photos very, very regularly of me working out in shorts in my garage. Like you can see, like is Ajax a fit guy? Yeah, but I always hated the aesthetic obsession, especially with general population marketing, and then like the whole bodybuilding sphere. It's always a comparison game. Who's bigger? Am I stronger than you? And there's always a bigger, stronger guy, right?
Yeah.
No matter who the hell you are, you could be Mr. Olympia. Well, there's another guy that's taller than you, right?
Yeah, I got mocked once on Twitter by making that mistake. I mean, it was friendly, but what's that guy's name? Drugan? Mike Drugan or Drugan?
He has me blocked, but
okay.
Yeah,
I could see that. There he could be. Anyway, he replied to something and I didn't know who he was. This was like a year ago, and I made some comment. I forget exactly what it was about how like, if you press 315 overhead, you can do whatever you want or something like that. And because I've pressed 315, which is like a pretty good press for
that's fucking strong.
A strict overhead press 315. Not bench press. And then he posted a video of him doing like 330 for 5 or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay. There's always a bigger, stronger guy. It's just, that's not what you can make your bones on. It has to be about how good you are at getting a regular person to whatever your specialty is, general fitness, fat loss, strength. Like how well can you do that with 1,000 randomly selected people from the population, whatever the thing you do is. And that's really, I'm like you, I don't post, I post sometimes lifting videos or stuff like once in a while, but it's probably less than 1% of my content, and it's never flexing or physique stuff. It's always like, if I do post that, which is less than 1% of what I post, it's always me doing something. Here's me showing you how I do the same things that I preach.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I post occasionally, like weighted chin-ups and that's one of my KPIs, right? Like I'm always trying to get stronger at that.
Yeah.
But if you, we both have actual, obviously, like teaching, coaching backgrounds where we work with people. It's like my mind around content that I consume, I'm like, I want to try and learn from people who deliver outcomes, who get results. To be very simplistic. Showing off your physique for the sake of showing it off, like that's like thumbs up, bro, kind of thing. Like I'm in my 30s now. Like I was never that narcissistic. Yeah, I mean, no hate the guys that do it, but I'm like you're posting that because you want people to look at you. Like, let's be real here. That was probably the driving motivation behind why you look like how you look. You want that reaction.
I think guys like, so if you don't know anything about this industry, you're going to look and your thought process will be understandably so. This person looks that way. They probably know how to help me look that way. Mm-hmm. And in a very small percent of cases, that's actually true, but usually it's not. And the way that you would know this, if you have a background like you and I'm sure you had seen this at the commercial gym. I saw this endless times at the commercial gym, is guys would look like that because of either some combination of genetics, drugs, and hard work. Sometimes they would genuinely work hard, but but their entire client list would not just not look like them, which is one thing because maybe they don't have the same genetic, but also not look any different week to week and month to month. Like their whole client list would look exactly the same week after week, month after month. So it's like, once you've seen that a dozen, 2 dozen times with a trainer who themselves looks like, a Greek god, but their entire client list not only doesn't look like them, but doesn't even improve within their own capabilities, you start to just not be impressed by like, okay, so you look like that. Like that just doesn't mean anything as far as how capable you are of helping others. Now, there are a small percent of people who look like a guy who can help others, but it's just not the norm.
No, there's not that many. I mean, it's very much the common fallacy. People see an elite athlete, Michael Jordan, greatest basketball player of all time. If I do what Jordan says, I'll be at Jordan's level. Like you're not, because he had certain genetic talents and gifts and personality environment that made him who he was. You can't just straight copy somebody. Yeah, at the same time, most elite performers make very poor coaches.
Yeah.
Because they never had to struggle, learn anything. If everything came naturally to them, well, so it did. Occasionally you do have really good bodybuilding coaches who are really good at training like natural lifters. Like I follow a few, like on social media, but it's just, they're like the needle in the haystack. The other factor too that I've seen, this is bodybuilding specific really, but you can apply it to other industries. When you work with elite individuals, so like, bodybuilders, coaches, or all their bodybuilding clients, they're all anabolic steroid users. They're all top 1% for muscular aptitude. They can kind of just give them more drugs and they'll get bigger, and that works. They don't necessarily need to know anything about training per se in terms of progressively building muscle. And same thing with coaches like Mike Boyle. I remember Mike Boyle, he had this article years ago. For those who don't know who Mike Boyle is, he's like a big time strength coach, strengthcoach.com, gone to personal training. But his original clientele, I think, was like hockey players, right? Like NHL guys.
Yeah.
Like good athletes, right? Like cultural athletes, pro athletes. He started training regular like clients, like the parents of his high school athletes at his gym, right? He's like, we're going to offer personal training. It'll be another revenue stream. Cool, right? And he had an article he wrote. This is probably over like almost 20 years ago. He's like, I had no clue how to train regular people because everyone I worked with was already athletic. So things I just took for granted of like, all right, new person, we're going to have you do squats and this and that. And they couldn't do any of it physically. Couldn't know how, I actually didn't know how to coach a person on how to do those movements because I'd only worked with people where I could show them something and they just get it.
Yeah.
And then that was it.
Yeah. I you see that so much in the industry. And what you said about the bodybuilding, just checking, see my mic for a second. I thought it wasn't working. It applies across the board. Like there's a very different skill set for whether it's powerlifting, whether it's Olympic, like any of these kind of niche physique oriented sports. There's a very different skill set that it takes to get somebody who's already in the top 1% to the top 0.01, or the best in the world. Let's say taking somebody who's already an IFBB pro bodybuilder and making them Mr. Olympia, or taking somebody who's already qualifying for nationals powerlifting and making them national champ. Those are a very different skill set than taking 45-year-old Joe from accounting who's never lifted before and teaching him how to do a squat without falling over with 75 or 95 pounds, and then making him reasonably strong, getting his squat to 225, getting his bench to 175, making him regular person strong. Like those are two very different skill sets. And the person who might be really good at the one, we say like great athletes or some of those people aren't very good coaches. Often they're not good coaches at all, but often they're good coaches for that little tiny niche that they exist within. One example I just came across, and I think I posted about, was Jim Wendler. Everybody knows Jim Wendler, 531, one of the most popular strength programs. So he was associated with Westside. And one of the things he talked about was he was doing all the Westside stuff for a while, and it wasn't helping his bench at all. He's just like, I don't understand why. Like I'm doing, and the reason was because that stuff was formulated for people who were already really strong. You had to have a 2,000 total just to be allowed in the gym. We could talk about equipped versus not equipped. I'm not, I have my, differences of opinion, but just on the base level, he said, once I started well, he's like, I had to build my base. I didn't have weak points. They were doing weak point trainings. I didn't have weak points. I was just weak, which is, I think, true for every beginner. It's a great quote, right? Novices, beginners don't have weak points. They're just weak. So targeting specific muscles, targeting, a weak, or if you're in a powerlifting context, targeting a weak point of the lift. If you're in a bodybuilding contest, like super isolating the muscle, like that makes sense when you're strong and have a weak point. It doesn't make sense when you're just globally weak.
Weak.
So he talked about how once he built his base, then he was able to take advantage of that, if I remember correctly. But before that, he said this stuff wasn't working for him because he was just not a strong, not a good bencher yet. So I think that idea, what gets somebody from 0 to 70 is very different than what might get somebody from 90 to 100.
No, extremely. Yeah, for those of you guys listeners don't know who Jim Wendler is, since I think you and I might be like dating ourselves a little bit. I think we're
Do people not know who he is anymore?
no, you're not. We're like what's the term Zoomers use? Like unk. It means like someone over the age of 30. We're like unk age now. But for those of you guys listening, of like who's that? So if you go back in time, like 2010, 11, 12, 13, powerlifting was super popular. Like that was like I think like the rise of powerlifting. And I think the reason powerlifting got popular is to tell a little story. When YouTube first came on the scene, Instagram, YouTube especially, there was no fitness content at all. Like, no one was making fitness videos of any kind. The only videos that existed of people training hard that were like really cool, there were a lot of powerlifters filmed their workouts, a lot of kind So like that was all got put on YouTube, and it was like, wow, these guys are moving huge amounts of weight. And then there were like bodybuilding DVDs of people that you already know, Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, Gustavo Bedell. I can name off people. There was like bodybuilding DVDs that got put on YouTube, but that was kind of it. You just had bodybuilding, and then you had like powerlifting content. But Jim Wendler, he was like a disciple of Westside Barbell. He wrote a book called 531, which is one of the best strength programs probably ever been written. Super simple. You do sets of 5, sets of 3. You do like a relative max, and then you take like a week-long deload, and you just repeat that process. And that ebook, it sold like something like 1 million copies for like $30. Like the guy retired off it. And actually, I met the editor of the ebook, Bob Ellenfelt, years ago. He was a mentor of mine. He passed away.
Oh, cool.
But Bob Ellenfelt, he was an editor at Muscle Fitness, and he was the guy that gave me my first magazine job, actually, like back in 2013, which like changed my life. But Bob was also the one that told me, like, hey, if you want to like break out of the fitness industry, personal training route, this was over a decade ago when your career choices a decade ago were like, you could be a personal trainer, you could be a personal training manager, you could own a gym, and then you could like maybe like sell supplements. Like that was it. Like no one thought of personal training as being a money.
You could be a fitness model.
Yeah, fitness model. Like, yeah, there was no money in it, right? Like personal training was considered kind of like a can kicker career.
Yeah, you're an aspiring actor or whatever.
Yeah, especially in Hollywood. But Bob was like, hey man, like if you want to change your life, like start selling ebooks, like start selling on the internet. And this was around like 2013. I was like, oh wow, like okay, I'll do that one day. And then later on, I started working for Mountain Dog, John Meadows, and like my life changed. But yeah, 531. I think the program's still out there. If anyone wants to go buy it, download it, read it, it's a good program.
My impression was it was still a popular program. Maybe I'm too unked to know what the kids are doing these days. I thought it was still popular, but maybe it's not, or maybe it's only popular with people above a certain age. But yeah, I just kind of assumed I say Jim Wendler, people will know who that is.
No, we're of like a certain generation of fitness. I mentioned Jim Wendler recently to a couple of younger kids who were like guys in like the early 20s. They were just like, who's that? Like they were like, is he on like, is he on Instagram? Like, what's his profile? Where like they're looking like assuming he's like, a guy, right? I'm like,
I really I forget how big these generational divides are. Sometimes I had an opportunity to have that hit me in the face not too long ago. I had the chance to go meet Roseanne Barr, and we got to meet. It was cool, and I was talking about it to my friend at the gym, and there was like a guy in the early 20s overheard us, and he like had this blank stare. I was like, "Oh, do you not know who that is?" And he's like, "Oh no, I never heard of her." I'm like, she had the most popular television show in the country for while we were young growing up, and she was just a major figure in that world. Also had a ton of fun with her, but regardless, I just couldn't believe I didn't know who she was. And she's like 100,000 times more famous than Jim Wendler.
Yeah, no, like this is it's a weird thing for me. Like, cause I don't, not, I don't think either of us feel old, but like, especially with the advent of social media, I think there's more distinct intergenerational differences in terms of just what people, the names that people are familiar with, what they've been exposed to. So if you were on the internet in 2010, for example, and you were like in your late teens, like, all right, you remember a certain set of people. If you were born in 2000 and you didn't start regularly using the internet, like and really sort of, looking for people, let's say your late teens, now it's like 2015, 16, or maybe you're 20, right? And you've only been using the internet since you were like 12, or last so many years. You don't know anyone who exists past, probably anything 2015, 2010 or earlier. It's just non-existent. Whoever was popular then, you don't know. It's just that's a whole different generation.
I had a theory. I've never stated this out loud before, and maybe I shouldn't because I can't prove it. It's pure speculation. But I was the thing you talked about why powerlifting got popular around that kind of early 2010s time.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because it's not just powerlifting, but that's when the powerlifting started changing back, I think, for the good, away from the multiply equipped powerlifting back towards raw. After about 15 years of dominance from that multiply, pretty much nobody was lifting raw. Now, I think there's still some problems because of the good Hearts Law stuff we talked about before, where they, they'll do things to maximize the, like if you look at the guys from what I think is the golden age, like 70s, 80s, into the early 90s, nobody there was lifting with the insanely high arch and the absolutely maximum, that maximum grit, legal bench.
Yeah.
Nobody was doing that. Those 4-inch range of motion benches. Nobody was doing a toes to bar or toes to plate sumo with a bendy bar. And most of those guys were really jacked. Right? Either they were super heavyweight who didn't care about their body weight, but not that wasn't the norm. Mostly they were, for within their size, they were very jacked. They were muscular. It was only later when the equipped thing took over that powerlifting kind of got its reputation as just being like kind of a rotund person sport. But anyway, I always wondered why that was. And maybe part of the reason is social media. They were the ones filming their workouts. But I had a guess. Some people aren't going to like this and it's only a guess. It could be wrong. What I thought was, so I've seen kind of what like we talked about. I've seen a lot of, I get in trouble from some of the bodybuilding or aesthetic type people when I talk about this, but I've seen it so much that it's a pattern that there's a lot of people who have done that type of training who it didn't work for. Now, it obviously does work for a lot of people. Like you can't deny, like there's a lot of people who it works for. But I've seen a lot of people, and not just people dicking around on their own, but people under the guidance of trainers, under the guidance of often competitive bodybuilders themselves who are coaching them, who it doesn't work for. And my guess is that it was until that time, those people just dropped out, right? I tried lifting weights. It didn't work for me. Eventually they didn't make progress. They just dropped out. In that late 2000s, early 2010s period is when the internet forum really took off. Yeah. And for the first time, a bunch of people, I think, talked to each other online who were in that situation. And somebody brings up, oh, well, that didn't work, but have you tried doing these high KPI lifts instead of your 6-day split that focuses on your tensor fascia lata, right? Like instead of these intense, super focused things that we talked about before, novices don't have weak points, they're just weak. Yeah. Instead of a program that very well will work for an advanced, strong person because they're able to apply a decent amount of stress to those targeted areas. A genetically average or below average weak novice can't really apply a lot of stress to those areas. Like they need to focus on the high KPI lifts. And a lot of these programs, a lot of these kind of intense, and this is not true about every bodybuilder or every bodybuilding focused program, but it is true about a lot of them. And they would have, novices focusing on, small muscle groups with isolated movements that just, they're not strong enough. They don't have enough of a base for that to move the needle yet. So instead of dropping out, they talk to each other. Oh, did you try 5-3-1? Oh yeah, that actually worked for my friend. Oh, did you try starting strength? Oh yeah, did you try strong lifts? And those people actually started doing something that worked for them. And they all talked to each other. And the ball got rolling on those things. Because that's where I got a ton of my business and a ton of people who just knew about me from these like various forums. And I'm like, how did you find me? Like, oh, on Reddit, everyone on Reddit says do starting strength, and they all got there after they tried push pull legs or bodybuilding split routine that didn't work for them, and then suddenly they were squatting 225, when they could never do anything before. And I think the reason and again, this is all a guess, or it's educated guess. I think the reason it's moved away in the last 5 years, because it's swung hard away from that back towards the more physique and aesthetic oriented, being way more popular now again, which it was not for about 15 years, I think is because of the ubiquity of how easy it is to get your hands on performance enhancing supplements now.
Mm.
I think that approach pretty much will work for everybody if they're on doing those things. If they're taking those performance enhancing supplements, it will work. As long as you're not doing it in a totally stupid manner, it's going to work. It's going to work better for others, some better for others. The programming still makes a difference, but it'll basically work if you're enhanced. But if you're a genetically average or below person doing one of the poorer versions of those programs, you're not going to get, I don't think you're going to get a lot out of it. And I think those people, no, I think they were like for those of you who are a little bit nerdy like I am and like to read about 19th century political economy, there is a economist and statesman named Frederick Bastiat. And when he's talking about economics, one of his big things he talks about is the seen and the unseen. So he talks about if somebody breaks a window, and the traditional stance is to think, oh, that stimulated the economy because now you have to pay somebody to fix your window, so that stimulates the economy. He says that's an error, because instead of having money now, instead of being able to spend money on other things that you wanted and needed, now you have to put that money into the window. So you would have bought a suit, you would have bought more bread, you would have, maybe put more money into your business and expanded it. But instead, now you had to waste that money on fixing the window, which was perfectly functional until somebody threw a stone through it. That was the unseen. So he said, when thinking about like economic or political decisions, you can't just think about the seen. Oh, I'm spending money on a window, I'm stimulating the economy. You have to think about the unseen. Before, you had a perfectly good window, and you also would have had a new suit, and you also would have had been able to expand your business. Now, all you have is a new window when you already had a good window. So I think those guys, because I saw this with my own eyes so many hundreds and maybe even thousands of times, I think those guys were the unseen. When people would look at experts to be like, oh, I know this works because I've seen it work, I think they were not looking at the unseen, who it didn't work for. It didn't work for kind of the average or below average guy who was not enhanced, who was, not doing, and I'm not saying there aren't good versions of split programs. There are, but like anything, there's better and worse. So the guy's doing kind of just the run of the mill, program that doesn't focus on, because you can do a bodybuilding program that's maybe a little different than I would train a novice, but it would still be in the realm of bodybuilding or aesthetics, that starts them off focusing on those high KPI lifts and just also does more targeted work. It's not how I would do it, but you could do that and succeed with that. I think that will work for most people. But the worst versions of these programs, people just pulling stuff from Flex or Muscle and Fitness or some stupid thing online, those people were the dropouts. And I think the forum era, the late 2000s, early 2010s, was the first time those people were able to get online and talk to other people what are people like me who are not enhanced, who tried that and it didn't work for them. What are they doing? Oh, they're doing 5-3-1. Suddenly they're actually getting results. Oh, they're doing like strong lifts or starting strength, and suddenly they're getting results. This is all educated guess. Like, I don't have I don't know if there would be any way to prove this. It's just these forums don't even exist anymore. They're all off the internet. But based on a lot of people who would come to me for coaching, and based on what I would ask them about themselves and their background, I have a strong suspicion that's the case. And I think we've swung away from it, because pretty much nowadays, anybody who wants to get on gear, who wants to get on performance enhancing supplements, can do so, whereas that was not the case back then. So stuff, the kind of programming that wouldn't have worked for those people often now works.
That's a really good point. Like, if you train enough clients over a long period of time, you'll discover, as every good coach does, that every style method of training can actually work for someone. Or you have individuals who will respond to something that's unconventional. You'll have those guys where it's like, you know what, low reps really don't work well for them. It's like, go moderate rep, go higher. Or you have that person where they actually do respond. Their adaptive response to a twice a week total body program is sort of pretty impressive. But then their response to like a more generalistic 3 or 4 day a week is like they get overtrained easily. Or you have those guys who are hard gainers where they need way more training to get the same level of adaptation. Or even, or they need way more training to get any adaptation. They're like, slow growth, right? And so you have this big mix. But I think the one thing that has changed big time with training in general, and especially bodybuilding training, I would say it's gotten a bit more intelligent in the sense that, okay, well, I could say it's gotten more intelligent, also it's gotten stupider in certain ways, but it's somewhat gotten more intelligent where there's more emphasis on, let's say, progressive overload, and that being a bodybuilder still means like you gotta like kind of lift heavy weights, right? And you could say like Ronnie Coleman, like, no one wants to lift heavy weights. Like Ronnie, for all of his, grunting and he's freakishly strong and all this, that, if you actually watch his programming, it's like very simplistic. It's like a chest day is like 3 exercises. It's like incline, flat, and decline. And he works up like a really heavy set. And he goes on to the next exercise. And the weights are absurd, right? Like, yeah, this is a 500-pound bencher. This is an 800-pound squatter. But yeah, and you can say like his range of motion, he's just throwing weight. But like, who gives a shit? It's great working, right? He's got,
Yeah.
he has one in a billion genetics, whatever. But like the actual programming, because the guy who does programming is Brian. I forget the founder of Metroflex, but Brian has like a whole programming book. It's really basic. I'm like, yeah, if you wanted to bodybuild and you hit a muscle from 3 angles for like a hard set each, that'll work. That's pretty good. If you go back to the 1990s, like Dante Chadell has always been a big influence of mine. And Dante made this point like 20, 30 years ago that what drives muscle growth is progressive strength gain. And, finding like those, like he calls them the power groove exercises where you can move weight and you can put tension on tissue and you can just get like freak strong, slab iron. Because like that's what guys lose sight of in bodybuilding. And then that's what a lot of regular people, though, kind of get caught up in, because you have like a whole, especially older bodybuilders, the old generation of guys, they just train to kill the muscle. It's like, it's about the pump, but that sick ass wicked pump, and just, you gotta fucking destroy it. Like you gotta have your chest fucking split. And like, if you're a big guy, you got genetics, all this, that, you're on drugs, you could do that. Having a regular person do that, their joints just feel thrashed, and they don't really recover from it. They're sort of beat up from the workout.
I think, even where you and I might have slightly different approaches in some areas, I think one of the reasons we have so much overlap and so much synergy between our approach is like Dante Trudell to me too, is when I look at intelligent bodybuilding training, he's one of the first people, maybe the first person I think of.
Yeah.
Like I because Twitter is such a short form, you do memes, you shit post. Sometimes if you pay attention to my account for a full week, you notice that I do it to everybody. I do it to my own people. I do it to bodybuilding. I do it to powerlifting. I do it to, like, I make fun of, shit post, meme about everybody. But I think because the paradigm is so oriented towards bodybuilding, I probably do it more towards bodybuilding. Well, that's not because I have specific something out for them. It's just because that's the most of what's out there. So it has the most stuff to pull from. But it doesn't mean it can't be done really well. Like, I think Dante Trudell to me is a huge influence on how I think about like intelligent bodybuilding would be done. And it's still, like you said, it's still ultimately tied to performance. Like if you go into a gym for a year and get sick pumps, but that 1 year later, there isn't a single objective metric on which you can perform better on, like, I bet if you got 20 people in one group and 20 people in the other, the ones who have the performance metric, objective performance metric, as long as it's objective, not just like, oh, I use more weight, but I shorten the range of, as long as it's objective, same criteria, more weight or more reps with the same weight, or, something like that, versus the other guys who got sick pumps but have no performance. I bet on the whole, the 20 guys or the 100 guys who have the objective performance increase would have an objective visual improvement more than the other guys.
Oh, absolutely. Like I saw a kid. So one of the big running jokes now in like bodybuilding is like the rise of like the biomechanics optimization. Where you're trying like, and now in some cases, like I actually experimented with that style of training for a while. Like Doug Brignoli, who passed away, Brick 20. I'm like, let me just try doing this like isolation only, movements. I'm like, and you can maintain muscle mass if you train that way, provided you use a full biomechanical. Like, you use a function range of motion, you're consistent with it. It's a very boring way to train. So, but like it was, it was an interesting experiment. But then what I've seen since then though is like this rise of like ultra optimization of like, all right, you gotta get every muscle into like, this bottom the lengthen, stretch position, use the cable to counterbalance, and then like you gotta stabilize yourself like the seatbelt, and like I thought it was like a joke at first, but then I've seen kids actually train this way at the gym. Yeah, when I say kids, I mean guys in like your teens, right? I saw a guy at the gym yesterday, and I was just like, it was like every meme became real. I was watching him. He's like a Caucasian kid, kind of chunky, probably in high school, and he's there, right? It's like, God bless him for being at the gym.
Yes.
But he's doing like a back workout, I guess, and he's like, it's like I don't even know what it was. It's like he had the cable across his body. It's got like 40, it's just like, whatever, no weight in the stack. He's like got 40 pounds. I guess it was like a cross body diagonal row. I'm like, it's like one of those things you're watching. I'm like, I don't know. Is he trying to like hit his upper back lats? Like, that's not really doing anything. And his whole workout was these movements like that. I'm like, that's not really doing anything. Like, it's not a progressible, it's not a progressive lift. You're never gonna get that strong on. It's sort of like a, inverse squared isolation movement. And then I'm thinking, like, looking at this kid, I'm like, if I just had you do deadlifts and assisted chin-ups, just those two things by themselves, like deadlifts and assisted chin-ups, and like the bent over rows, he actually probably had the structure for it, right? I could tell looking at him, like, just 3 lifts, you'd get more out of that back workout than whatever this bullshit is, that you're trying to film at the same time.
I think what how we started the conversation all the way back to the beginning about there's no kind of systemic thinking, there's no model. I think a lot of that comes from not having a model of lifter development. Even if your model is not perfect, because it's not as easy as mathematics. 2 + 2 = 4. Like, there's so many. There's physiological, there's psychological, there's things so much we don't know yet. And the studies, I think the studies on basic physiology are decent, but the studies on like specific muscle building, are usually not that great. But just some kind of framework. So the way I think about it is, I have many times, because I was the head of the strength program at what was then the biggest CrossFit gym in Manhattan. I didn't do CrossFit coaching, but I ran the strength program that operated inside the biggest CrossFit gym in Manhattan for about 4.5 years. And so I worked with a lot of CrossFitters who had previously been exposed to the kind of CrossFit was very influenced by the Olympic weightlifting world in terms of the barbell stuff. So they all did high bar and front squats only. And they all got stuck between 225 and 255s, like every dude. And of course, I say every, I'm exaggerating, but it was so common, 225 to 255, and they get stuck forever. And sometimes they'd have been stuck for a year or two or more before they met me. I would switch them to the low bar squat, take them back down to, 175 to learn how to do it or something like that. And then over the course of 8 weeks, work them up to 315. And they would typically hit 315 at the end of 8 weeks, then go back to CrossFit. And their CrossFit coaches at first were all up in arms. They haven't done a high bar squat or a front squat in 8 weeks. How are they going to clean? How are they going to do front squats in the what? Every single one of them PR'd those lifts the very, very first time they came back. Now, I wouldn't say that would work forever. I wouldn't say that you should only low bar squat forever for those guys. But what it showed was that it's true that the front squat isolates the quads better than the low bar squat.
Mm-hmm.
It's true that the front squat is more quad dependent than the low bar squat. But if it's getting stuck at 200, 60% of 200 is less than 40% of 315. Right? So at a certain point, like if you can make the global, like what you talk about, the global weight, the global loading, the global force production go up, not maybe for an advanced lifter who has to be more specific, but for someone who doesn't have that base yet, that builds their base better than the isolation, better than the targeting. And that's just the guy you see at the gym with the seatbelt holding the empty handle with a strap on his elbow and a cuff, like that's just like the 10 times more of the front squat. The front squat isolates more than the low bar squat, but that it isolates they got it down to the fiber, right? Like they know the exact muscle fiber that's being isolated by that. Why are none of those guys big? Because that level of isolation, well, that level of isolation probably doesn't work for anybody. But even the a little more normal level of isolation, it tends to work better. Again, if you have good genetics, you'll respond to anything. If you have gear, you'll better respond to anything. But for like the broad population, that kind of isolation responds better to people who already have a pretty good level of force production to begin with. Whereas for the guys who don't, even the low bar squat got their front squat higher than front squatting did. Now, this is the opposite of what all the Olympic lifting coaches told me, because I dabbled and come from Olympic lifting before I got into low bar squatting.
Yeah.
I had a guy myself who was an Olympic lifter himself and a coach, and he was a disciple of a guy named Artie Dreschler, who is kind of one of the most OG Olympic lifting coaches in the country. He famously ran the maybe he still does, I don't know, the program in New York City and Queens for decades. He was the last American man to have a world record in Olympic lifting or in the press. It was right before they eliminated the clean and press. He had I think a junior world record in the clean and press in 1969 or 1971 or something like that, right before it was eliminated. Anyway, my coach was a disciple of his. He was a good guy. He was back at Equinox when I was the manager. He worked for me, but I hired him to be my Olympic lifting coach. I worked with him for a few months because I wanted to get into it. So everything I was told from there was that not only would low bar squats not help the front squat in the clean, but they might actually hurt it because it would ruin the movement pattern. You're learning to squat in the wrong pattern. And I heard that for years. I believed it for years. It's one of the reasons when I started doing the kind of myself starting strength before I became a coach for them, had to do it myself for a while. I stuck with the high bar. I did everything like the book, except I still high bar squatted for a couple of years because I had been so influenced from Olympic lifting and CrossFit type. Then I started doing it myself and I was like, oh, this works really well. Then when I started coaching hundreds of CrossFitters whose front squats and high bar squats were stuck, or the high bar squat was stuck 225 to 55, the front squat was a little less. And these are just regular people. They're not like, I wouldn't say this would carry over in the same way to a international level athlete. They have more specific needs, but for that base, for people who haven't yet built that base, just doing nothing but low bar squat for 8 weeks, their high bar squat went up 10%, their front squat went up 5% without even doing it. So their skill on it was a little rusty. So, their clean went up 10 pounds without having cleaned. Or they did power cleans, but not squat cleans, stuff like that. So it's this idea that was a very, and I coached like 400 or 500 CrossFitters over the course of those years. I forget exactly, 300, 500, something like that. I would run 2 classes of 10 people each 5 times a year for 4.5 years. There was another class that I had a guy who I mentored. He ran it. So I sort of supervised them, if you want to count that, I don't know, a bunch of 100. And there were 0 exceptions to this rule. Like it happened every single time. So what that told me is I had previously bought into the theory of this kind of general before specific. But that was a very strong, even in the face of conventional wisdom to the opposite, because all the Olympic lifting and coaches, they were all said, no, it'll mess up your front squat, mess up your clean. This was a very stark example of that working out in practice, where it wasn't just 1 or 2 times, it was hundreds of times, and it was hundreds of times without a single exception.
Yeah.
So even though it's not in a study, even though it's not formalized, it's not published anywhere, I'm like, I'm going to believe my own eyes. I repeated it. It was a repeatable process with, 100%. So once I saw that really clicked that idea of how, I guess the way I put it when I write about it, I always try to mix this stuff. So I'm going to try to get it right. Simple, general, and basic. Simple before complex, in terms of programming.
Yeah.
General before specific, meaning goal specific. So if you want to do bodybuilding, triathlons, college football, like whatever your specific goal is, the training will still be general before it gets specific. And the further you are on the path, the more specific it's going to be. General before specific, and basic before individualized. Simple, general, basic before complex, specific, and individualized. And individualized is the part that you mentioned, where some people respond great to that 2 days per week full body, and the 3 or 4 days, ices them. Some people respond better to, higher volume and lower volume. Some people respond better to, 1 top set and a back off versus 5x5. Like there's so many different individual, permutations. Some people respond better to a 5-day split, and others respond better to a 3-day total, whatever it is. The individual variations between people. So simple, general, and basic before complex, specific, and individual. Um, I think the reason that a lot of coaches don't really know how to coach like that kind of average person is because they don't have that basic model in mind. Just
Mm,
simple, general, basic before complex, specific, and individual.
that is fantastic. That is very well said. No, I'd agree. I mean, not to like copy that completely, but I realized this over the years that like customization with programming can be somewhat fallacious. Like a lot of people don't actually need a custom program, or the idea of customization in general, or getting very data driven and trying to like figure out your body, especially with like this. We have so many apps now and ways to track and this whatever kind of metrics. And you sort of like get tyrannized by data and this idea that you need to uh, find these like crazy hyper specific solutions. And in reality, like again, the average stereotypical person, if you just get generally stronger and you do something generic for cardio, which is maybe 5 exercises, it's like, all right, like squat, bench, deadlift, chin, row, bodyweight row, whatever, do some curls, walk on treadmill for 30, 45 minutes. That's probably going to get you 70 to 80% of the way there for health improvements.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, obviously adapt the lifts to your physique and get a coach and all this stuff. And like, this idea that you are like a unique snowflake and something has to be designed for you, you're probably not there yet. Even like the biohacking world, right? And now you have the ability, you can wear CGM and you can have an Aura ring, and you can go get labs done and blood work and biomarkers. And there's, God knows there's how many peptides you could take. There's a lot of cool shit you can do, right? Yeah, but I tell guys all this time, like I have a big biohacking group, Broscience Club. I tell everyone this all the time, like 89% of your health is going to be you guys lifting, doing some cardio to get your heart rate up, and eating like an adult. And then beyond that, it's like, okay, what do you actually want to improve with your life? And maybe there's cool things that can help you. But before you get to any of that, you need these basics in place.
Yeah. If you're not at that level, like maybe it's I don't know if the numbers, I wouldn't say it's, that Pareto optimization, 80% of your results come from 20% of like, I don't know if the numbers are exact, but the idea that like a basic few things are going to get you a long way of the way. And until you've done that, you don't really need to optimize. I'm a very strong believer in that idea from when it comes to fitness. Like there's some just basic stuff that if you do that well, you'll be 80% of the way there. And only after you do that does it make sense to even think about optimization. And even then you might not need a lot of it, but it might just be a small thing. Like I do incline dumbbell bench instead of flat barbell bench, like a small adjustment. I do, I do a barbell squat 1 week and a safety bar squat the other, like a small adjustment. I added the leg press as a supplemental lift, to my squat, like a small thing. It's not like crazy 8 million lines of data driven. It's just like a small basic adjustment. That's going to get 99% of people 90% of the way there or more. Stuff like that. Like, so even when you make those individual adjustments, they're not crazy. You don't need 4,000 lines of code. You need like, okay, I'm doing dumbbell incline bench now. I'm doing, 1 week low bar squat, 1 week safety bar squat instead of only low bar squat or whatever. It was something like that.
Yeah, like I tell everybody that in terms of like exercise, because like so much of training is just built on doing productive exercises that your sort of job the first like 1 to 2 years of training is just to figure out those core movements. And it's not going to be that many things. It's like, all right, what works for your legs? It's going to be some kind of squat. It's going to be it's like 1 or 2 kinds of squats. It'll be a deadlift, some kind. And then you can, you throw in the machines like press, whatever that works. All right, upper body, it's going to be some kind of press, chest press, overhead press. It's going to be some kind of pull, be some chin up. You're talking about like 10, 12 movements. They're actually going to move the needle progressively in the long term. And everything else is just, as you said, permutations of those things.
Yeah. One of the things I still see, I used to take it really seriously. Then I made fun of it and then it went away. Now I'm seeing it again, is people talking to the general population, talking about how like, oh, like when you do curls, like you have to like turn your pinky up really hard. Or if you're doing flies, you have to like do them this way. So your pinky, like, it's like, maybe that makes a difference if you're already in the top, 1/10 of 1%, but it doesn't make a difference to the general population. Like you just need to like do some kind of curl, do some kind of row, do some kind of squat pattern. Like, does it really make, does the angle of your pinky really make it? No, but none of those people are ever going to have enough muscle and a low enough body fat to notice the difference of that, if it makes the difference at all. I've seen like stuff like that make a comeback, which is what I grew up, in Flex magazine. They'd always be like, whoever, like, they were recording the workout of whoever it was, and it'd be like, Sean Ray's special tip for the for the flies, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean. Like, I don't even know if it could have just been the editor, but
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of it, though, I mean, from having written a little bit from magazines, a lot of that stuff gets completely made up. Um, but like, yeah, I mean, even that, like like there is something to the idea of actually, like, biomechanics is real. Knowing how to keep your spine aligned, to keep having a stacked spine, being able to breathe, stabilize the core. Like, that's all legitimate. Like, definitely, obviously, bench press. If you flare out your elbows and you arch your back, like, you're really distorting what that lift was intended to be. But then, beyond that, like, trying to get hyper specific with biomechanics, it's Shelby Starnes has a really good quote. He's like, it's like trying to polish a pebble. He's like, there's no size even to speak of what you're trying to shape here. Like, if you can't, like one of the metrics I use for guys is like 100 pound dumbbells and chest press. I'm like, if you can do that, you have some upper body muscle. Now, that's not elite strength. That's not freak. But like, if you can chest press 100 pound dumbbells, you're going to have some chest shoulder development just by default. And then from there, you can get more specific. But until you can do that, you need to be very clear with your exercise sort of hierarchy priorities.
yeah, polishing a pebble is that's a fun way to think about it. I mean, I think about it as like a 225 bench, is like kind of the standard, but 100 dumbbells is even a little more than that. So that's being even even more, making people get their basics even more before they think about doing anything else. Because I don't know exactly. I've never like found a perfect way to correlate dumbbells with the barbell. It always like varies a little bit depending on the lift, but like, if you could do 100 dumbbells for, what do you say, for a set of 10?
Yeah, like it's
Set of 8?
for reps. Yeah, like 100 pound dumbbells can you actually do this for reps? Like, let's say 6-10 range.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely quite a bit more than a 225 bench. So that's holding people to a decent standard before they start to worry about that customization and optimization of anything, which makes sense because everyone's majoring. Or what is Stan Efferding sometimes says about people who like get 3 hours of sleep in order to do 4 a.m. fasted cardio. He's like, you're stepping over you're stepping over dollars to pick up pennies. Like,
Yeah.
you need to sleep more than 3. So I think there's a similar thing here where people are stepping over like the big rocks to pick up the pebbles.
Yeah, well, I mean, like another like a little phrase I like to throw at people. I'm like, there's no point in trying to like optimize for average. Like, again, I see it's like more. This is more biohacker world of like, all right, you got your blood work, you got all these markers. I'm like, so like, what's your core issue here? Your core issue is that you need to lose body fat, and your blood pressure's too high. Like, that's so we need to lose weight is what we need to do. Yeah, everything else, like, your energy levels, and like people like have like, well, how can I improve this, and this? I'll do these kinds of consults. I'm like, yeah, none of this really matters. Like, your core problem is that you're like physically weak or underslept or undermuscled, or like you have very bad endurance, or you're 25% body fat, you're overweight. Address that first, then all these other things will improve.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like just like there's high KPI lifts, there's high KPI or high KPI body metrics that will respond to the doing the basics.
I mean, if you want to live a long time, it's like that's not a complex formula. You have to walk a lot, have a relatively, like healthy resting heart rate, 60 beats a minute, have your blood pressure be 120/80 or lower. Like, that's extremely objective. You can't argue with that. If it's higher than that, you've got work to do.
Yeah, that's another thing that I've changed in the last 5 years is I used to have, for pure novices, it could be a little tricky because of psychological reasons, but purely physiologically, I used to tell novices to do nothing outside their lifting for like 3 to 6 months. Just recover on your off days. Don't do any cardio. Don't do anything. I still have a little bit of reservations telling them to do cardio because they almost always do too much. once, like the kind of people who want to do it will almost always do too much and cut their gains short. Uh, but if I have somebody who I think is psychologically balanced enough, I think there is an amount of cardio you could do even for a novice that will be beneficial rather than taking away from your linear progression. And certainly something like walking, like getting some kind of baseline of daily walking. That's something I was 5 years ago wasn't on my radar at all, and now I encourage for my clients to do that. Some of them aren't receptive, some of them don't care, but the ones who want to, I'm like, yes, if you can take a 10 to 15 minute walk after each meal, and then another you know 20 or 30-minute walk later in the day, and you'll get plus whatever else you did in the day, you'll get your 8 to 10,000 steps. I mean, is that amazing? 8,000, but it's pretty good for someone who was sedentary before. And I think stuff like that can be done to improve health without taking away from the gains that you'll make, even as a novice on the linear progression, when we're asking the most of your body. Now, I'll give you an example of what I saw a lot of why I used to be against it. I had a kid named Nick. I say kid, he was probably in his early 20s and I was in my mid 30s. So to me, he was pretty soon out of college, and he came to my CrossFit class, and he was an obsessive CrossFitter. And my rule was, for the first 8 weeks, if you can do the program, I had an 8-week program. 8 weeks on, 1 week off, repeat. You could do my program as many times as you want. And if you go through it once, you can even do CrossFit together with the program. But the first time through, the first 8 weeks, you have to do you do nothing, no CrossFit, because we're going to be asking so much of your body. We're going to be changing your squat, deadlift, your bench, your overhead press, your chin. Yeah. So, but you're not going to be able to sustain doing CrossFit and that. And now after that, I had limits. I think I allowed 2 CrossFit classes per week. It wasn't like unlimited. You can't take 7 classes. But I said, if you want to take the program again, you could do 2 CrossFit classes per week plus my program. But the first time through, the first 8 weeks, only my program. And I enforced the rule very strictly. And this one kid, he was just obsessed with working out. He couldn't stand only lifting 3 days a week. So he would go to the gym early in the morning when he knew I was there to take a CrossFit class. He would maybe he even joined another different gym just to so, and eventually he got caught. But what was funny is he started failing his lifts in week 5 or 6. Yeah. He was a young, healthy, pretty strong kid. And it wasn't even like that. He was squatting 255 or 260. He eventually went on later in over the course of years to squat well into the 4s, maybe even 5. I saw him he was cleaning over 3 plates. He became he had a lot of potential. He could have gotten right up to probably 365 squat and linear progression. But he started failing at 250, 260 because he was doing all this other working out. So to me, it's not like I didn't know that before. I was already a veteran coach by that point, but that was just a very stark example of how easily the kind of person who asks to do more quickly spirals into doing way too much more, to the point where it's detrimental. So I had a no zero tolerance policy, but I said, because look, it's not like you're going to get fat and out of shape in 3 or 4 months, 5 months at the most, I guess maybe 6 at the most, but still not that long. You're still going to be training hard. You could just put that stuff off for a while. And that's not completely unreasonable, because there are a lot of people who will take that little bit of permission and to do too much. But I'm much more open now to, look, as long as I think you're a balanced, psychologically balanced person who's going to actually listen to instructions, we can get in some cardio as long as it's not too long, as long as it's not too intense. We can get in some cardio during your linear progression. We can certainly get in some walking during your linear progression. So that's one of those other things I've changed on. Yeah, is this very topic.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Since there is something to the a lot of people don't realize this on the plane of recovery. Your ability to recover and adapt is finite. Yeah, it's not infinite. You can't. If you're gonna, let's say, run a linear progression model, then you also want to do a lot of cardio, or just you want to do extra working on top of it, you'll hit stasis really quickly. Yeah, it's something that I've realized over the years. I've changed from let's say higher volume more to moderate volume, sort of to lower volume, higher intensity stimulus, where to keep progress going, you there is a fine line you have to walk, and if you cross it, it just sort of stops. And then it's and the program could be good, the workout exercises, but you're kind of doing a little too much. And I found more often that people, assuming someone's training consistently, they're following a program. Programs, if you're going to write a good program, you want to start off doing too little than trying to overextend.
Yeah, you can add more easily than you can dig yourself out of a hole.
Mm.
Right? Like if you're in a hole, if you're in a hole where you've done too much, and I make fun of sometimes people, you can't really overtrain that hard if you're weak. But if you mega dose on volume, then you can, right? Every meme has to have a little bit of assumptions in it. So I actually posted recently a meme about you can't, if you're weak, you're not going to be able to train more than you can recover from in 2 or 3 days. That's true, provided that you have a reasonable amount of volume. But if you spam volume, if you mega dose volume, even a super weak person could overdo it and then just not make progress because they're constantly in that hole, like you said. So that's one of the reasons why sometimes I argue with people about why not, because I am a big fan of supplemental lifts, accessory lifts. Like I do them myself, I program them for my clients, but I do very little of that in the earliest stages. And people ask me why. They're like, if it's beneficial, why isn't it beneficial from day one? And my answer is, it's not that there can be no benefit from day one, but it's that at the weak beginning level, um, it doesn't provide as high a stimulus as it does later when you're strong, but it could provide enough fatigue to interfere with the increase of your high KPI lifts. So whatever you choose as your high KPI lifts, whether it's the basic barbell lifts or a variation, whatever you're going to use for that, like if what the accessory stuff is going at this point is going to get in the way of rapidly increasing those, let's just put it off a little while, because the high KPI lifts is going to be the biggest bang, going to get the most out of that. And then when you're not asking yourself to progress so quickly anymore, 9 months down the line, you're not adding weight every workout. You're not even adding something every week, a rep or 5 pounds or a set. Like you're not at, a year later, whatever, you're not adding, it's slower going. Then you start, whatever it is, however long it takes for each person, then you start adding in that other stuff, because then your progress is made by stacking weeks and weeks together. So all of those accessory stuff, the isolating, the targeting, the focusing, that can work in the stack. But if you can add a rep or add a set or add 5 pounds to your high KPI lift in 2 days from now and do it again 3 days later, or do it this week and do it again next week, I was like, that's going to get you more than the little thing. And if the little thing might add too much fatigue to recover enough to do that, because just like you said, the recovery is finite. So when you're stacking over weeks, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, there's a continuum to training where, like, you at some point in time, you might use all the tools, but you don't use all the tools all the time.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Like someone asked me recently, I posted like a list. I just like something I had in my drive of like, hey, my kind of like my favorite exercises over the years. It was like, chest, shoulders, back, whatever. But I didn't have a rear delts on the list. And someone's like, well, what do you do for rear delts? I'm like, that's not to say that I don't have people train to rear delts, but like if I did the conversation, like it wasn't gonna mog the guy. I'm like, bro, like could you like do like 20 body weight rows at once? Like your rear delts, I'm talking about if you have a sliver of muscle on your back, which is predominantly trained only with isolation lifts, like side lying power raise, whatever. I'm like in the hierarchy of importance, that's like at the freaking bottom. Like who I don't say who cares. I'm like that. For 9% of people reading this, your issue with your physique is not your rear delts. It's because you can't press your body weight. That's why your shoulders are small.
Right. It's that's stepping over the dollars to pick up the pennies. Are there those people who need to focus on their rear delts? Sure. Is that you? Not very likely.
I mean, it's fun to train rear delts, but again, like, Pareto principle, 80-90% of shoulder gains probably going to come from overhead pressing. Yeah. Now, whether that's standing or seated or dumbbells, whatever, it's going to come from shoulder pressing.
Some version of pressing. Then at a certain point, you'll start to benefit from lateral raises, which everyone eventually does. But how much do you need to? I like to do. I love the I like the reverse flies on the cables, because for whatever reason I like feeling the tension.
Yeah,
which is not true. I'm much more of a free weight guy on the whole, but for whatever reason that thing I like doing on the cables rather than the bent over, dumbbell version. But do I do those every week forever? Like I have them in my program for 12 weeks, and then I take them out for 12 or whatever it is. It's like there's a great still shot that I have of Kirk Karwoski, who is he was a contemporary of Ed Cohn. He was one of the best powerlifters of all time. He may be the most jacked powerlifter of all time in his prime. He looked like his proportions were a little different than a bodybuilder because of he was doing powerlifting. But in terms of overall muscularity, he was probably competing at his peak at, I would guess, 8% body fat with extremely muscular upper and lower body. Like his legs were so big that a bodybuilder probably would have wanted smaller legs. But it's not because his upper body was small. It's just because his legs, he squatted 1,000 pounds. Like he was ginormous. Anyway, there's a picture of him in the gym deadlifting. I think he did 800 for a double, which he never did in competition. But at the gym, and after the second rep, he throws the bar down. He turns to the side and walks off the camera. And as he's walking aside, his rear delt is like a giant slab of meat. It's like this just he was so muscular all over his whole body. It's at a low body fat. I don't know what his actual. When I say 8%, I'm just guessing. Based on
he was. I mean, he was lean with abs. Those are the guys. You guys listening. If you go online, Kirk Kowarski, there's videos of him like drinking beer in his apartment. And the dude's just like a brick shit house.
Yeah,
and like most powerlifters are not that cut. He was like a 6-time, I think, like world champion, something like that.
He was about 5. He wasn't tall either. I want to say he was probably around 5'7", and he was 275 ripped.
Yeah.
Right, 275 ripped at like 5'7", and he probably was really 285 because he competed at 275, so that would include cut weight. Anyway, I was just thinking, I was looking through his program recently, at least the ones that you could, there's the Marty Gallagher, and there's one other place where he talked about his program that was online. I forget where, and you didn't see a bunch of rear delt work. It wasn't like loaded up on rear delt work. It's just like, I'm guessing he did it once in a while, but like you train your whole body in such a profound way, like that's going to get worked along the way.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, that'll be the rear delt will be part of the global network of muscle. If you're doing, like, I know he liked to do sort of like heavy, sort of like pull shrugs. He kind of like shrug, pull the bar to his waist. He had short arms, right? It's a weird lift, but it works for your physique. But yeah, if you're doing heavy pulls and like your upper back's under prolonged tension that way, whatever you're doing deadlifts like 5 to 8 range, right? 5 to 10 range, something lighter. That section of your deltoid will be stimulated. Yeah, and if you need more on top of it, then do more. But
yeah, it's like neither of us are saying don't ever do rear delts.
No.
It's that idea of are you at the stage where you need to isolate them yet? And even if you are, how much? Like, are you stepping over the dollars to pick up the pennies?
So yeah, on that, Ice Ray's been talking 2 hours, brother. I have another guest supposed to come on like in.
Oh, I'm sorry. The time of stories.
Yeah, that's all we got. Like, we're gonna see each other later, but
yeah,
where can people find you online if they want to work with you? Where should they contact you? Let the people know.
Probably Twitter is the best place right now. I have Twitter. I'm at Wolf Strength, WOLFSTRENGTH, just like the animal Wolf Strength. Instagram is Wolf_strength because someone already had that. Those are probably the 2 best ways. I also have a Substack called Deep Squats, Shallow Thoughts, which is great. There's a little bit of self-effacing humor there, which I don't have a regular posting schedule. It's kind of when something strikes me. So I have something like 100 articles over the past 2.5, 3 years there, but it's not on like every Monday. It's just when I'm struck by an idea. Those are probably the best 3 places. I do online coaching. If somebody wants to, just contact me through one of those places is the best, easiest way to get in touch.
Awesome. All right, brother. So I'll see you later tonight at 7 p.m. for dinner, along with our mutual MD friend. And yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I can't believe 2 hours passed. I thought I
looked at the clock. I was like, oh, damn. That I thought it was like, I don't know. I thought we were like 40 minutes in. So
yeah, I would have guessed about an hour. Okay.
Adios. Yeah, I will talk to you again. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you all, or hear you all, or not even hear you. All of you will hear me on the next episode.